We've zoomed in on our viewing area. The only place that has to deal with a tornado warning at this point in time is southern Van Buren County. So if you live in Van Buren County, you need to get inside. You need to go to the lowest level, a secure place. We're talking basement or even just a bathroom that has no windows or a safe closet. It's been a while since we've seen a tornado warning, so it's good to remember what to do. Biggest thing, go inside sturdy structure. Cars are not safe. So again, southern Van Buren County, we're seeing rotation. This is from Hartford down to Keeler. A lot of heavy rain, quite a few flashes of lightning, and this is tracking towards Decatur, Lawton, Paw Paw, and eventually here, Portage, Schoolcraft, Vicksburg, and Pavilion. So a few arrival times for you. Decatur looks like we could see an intensity, this storm pick up, and of course, produce a tornado at about 9:39. So the sooner you can get into your safe space, the better. Lawton, 9:43. Schoolcraft, 10:02, so make sure you're getting to your safe space before 10:02. Vicksburg, 10:08, Pavilion, 10:10, and Fulton, 10:20. These are tracking at about due east, and this line has a history of producing strong tornadoes. Now here in West Michigan, especially at the time of day, we're looking for a brief isolated tornado. So something that's capable of knocking down trees. Still, oftentimes when we see these weak tornadoes, they do damage, and oftentimes they can be hazardous to even fatal, unfortunately. So that's why it's good to go inside and stay safe. You'll notice that we have a lot of flashing boxes here. Technically, Dowagiac, Pokagon, Cassopolis, Penn, Volena, stretching down from Berrien County into Cass County in a severe thunderstorm warning. This is for damaging winds, and again, an isolated tornado is possible. But if we look at velocity, this shows us where the rotation is most likely. And as meteorologists, we're trained to look for that red and green couplet zone. And we're trained to have it be oriented to the radar in a certain direction. This shows us that there is rotation. It is tornadic rotation, and it's at least existing inside the thunderstorm. So the question now, is it wrapping down to the ground? Our cloud bases are so low because there's so much moisture in the atmosphere that it's not going to take much for this to drop down near Keeler. So Keeler, especially in Van Buren County, you need to be inside in your safe space. Covert, Bangor, South Haven, over to Pine Grove. We've also been noticing some strong velocities there. So damaging wind gusts capable of knocking down a tree, definitely possible. And we're going to continue to monitor that line carefully because it does not take much to spin up an additional tornado. Sarah, I might have you zoom in on the Keeler area so we can get some street names, potentially. So again, the Keeler zone, you can see a lot of flashes of lightning, heavy rain. Do not go outside. You're not going to be able to see anything. I know there's always that temptation, right, to go and get that eyesight verification. Not a good idea here. Not even if you live in Kalamazoo County. You're not going to be able to see anything because the rain is too heavy and we're getting too close to sunset. So right now, looks like the peak of rotation was just sampled at 67th Street in the Keeler area, heading towards 62nd Street. This is at the intersection of about 79th Avenue and 62nd Street. You guys are in the zone here. 74th Avenue, 77th Avenue, also right where the rotation is highest and most intense. A lot of rain, so even if you look up in the sky, you might not see it, but a big burst of wind possible. This is tracking. Again, what is the forward moving speed?
45 miles.
45 miles per hour. So this is faster than some of our other cells. This is going to be moving quickly towards 55th, all the way down Territorial Road, basically riding down Territorial Road. So all of the intersections into Fritzburg, along County Road, 352, all need to get into your safe space. Decatur, the entire region of Decatur, get inside, get safe. It's been a while since we've had to deal with something of this caliber. And again, you could just hear a really big gust of wind. It could miss your household. But this is a strong enough rotation that we're taking it seriously. And we are going to be using some of the different radar functions too as this moves through Keeler and Fritzburg and Decatur to see if any debris is being picked up and lofted into the air. If we see that, then we have confirmation that a tornado is on the ground. This is something called the debris tracker. And right now it looks like we're down to about an 80 in Keeler if we look at our scale. That's not enough for me to think that it's a debris ball at this point in time. And by the way, I have meteorologist Sarah Flynn, meteorologist Blake Harms, eyes on the sky, looking at everything. Blake, what do you have?
Yeah, can we take, here it is. We got Michigan storm chasers on this storm, and you can actually see the wall cloud. This is from Alex Melendez. They're tracking this tornado-warned storm in southern Van Buren County, and there you can see it there. Actually, if we can take it full screen if possible, we can show you exactly what you're looking at, give you a little bit of a closer view, but we do have what appears to be a wall cloud, and that lines up with our velocity of a potential developing tornado across parts of southern Van Buren County. So again, we have our Michigan Storm Chaser crews on the ground. They're going to be keeping us updated as they continue on with this storm. Alan, as you mentioned, we're watching not only that sector there in southern Van Buren County, but also another area of some enhanced winds potentially across the northern parts of the county. We do have that tornado warning that does continue. And again, pretty evident here. We saw sites like this across Chicagoland earlier this evening with tornadoes that develop very quickly. And that is something that you need to be taking seriously right now, as again, we have visual proof of at least a rotation that's occurring, which aligns well with what we're seeing on radar at this time.
Yeah, and something else that we're focusing on is the heavy rain that's ongoing. The severe threat is much lower with that. However, we could see some localized flooding, and we're already starting to get some flooding reports in. That's mainly north of the severe zone. So basically, Allegan County down through Berrien County and Cass County, we have the zone of severe weather that we're watching for. And the only folks that are in a tornado warning right now, Keeler, stretching over towards Decatur, Lawton, and this does include Mattawan. Eventually, this is going to be headed towards Portage. If it can hang on to its rotation, then we will see the tornado warning extended. This storm is moving at about 45 miles per hour, which means the tornado that it could produce would move at that speed as a bird flies towards Decatur, Lawton, Mattawan, and then eventually Portage and Schoolcraft. What we have going on right now is something called rotation tracker. This is really helpful. This just shows us the bullseyes of where the rotation is strongest within the storm. So everything in green is weak rotation, and you can see that there's a lot of green associated with the tornado warning in general. But these pockets of deep red show us where rotation is quite strong. Now, luckily, we're not seeing any pockets where the rotation is extreme, which is great news. But when we were monitoring this line of showers and storms through Chicago, we were seeing reds, strong rotation, and that was enough to produce tornadoes on the ground. So once it gets to these red bullseyes, like the one that you're seeing directly over Keeler, there is the high potential that a tornado can quickly wrap down to the ground. So this is the latest scan for us. You can see several flashes of lightning out ahead. I'm going to change views to the classic reflectivity just briefly. And you can see that Keeler is seeing big downpours. Same with Decatur. And Lawton, you're just seeing light rain at this point in time, but there's going to be a big wall of rain headed towards you. So everyone is going to be dealing with the heavy rain, but it's mainly the rotation over Keeler right now that we're most concerned about for imminent danger or damage. If you live in Keeler, if you live in Van Buren County in general, make sure you're going inside, going to your safe space. Again, that's a basement. That's the best move. Otherwise, lowest level of a secure building. Go away from windows and doors. And actually, they do recommend that if you have a blanket or even a bicycle helmet, that you can do that as well. And we haven't had to do this very often in West Michigan. We've seen very little severe weather. But from Hartford down to Keeler, this again is moving at about 45 miles per hour. And in a moment here, Sarah Flynn is going to take us to the wide radar, and she's going to show us what's going on across all of West Michigan. Because if you were to just look outside, it would feel like almost anyone could see severe weather. In the short term, though, tornado warning just for southern Van Buren County. Sarah?
Yeah, so a little bit of a wider view if you're just tuning in now. We still do have a few severe thunderstorm warnings in effect. Obviously, that tornado warning is going to be our top priority, at least for the time being while it lasts. But this is what you'll see again if you open our Storm Team 8 tracking app or really any radar at this point. Anywhere south of I-96 is where we're dealing with these strong storms. So if you're around the I-96 corridor or further north, you're certainly seeing that heavy rainfall and even a good deal of lightning coming along with it, but nothing severe quite yet at this time. So again, we'll we'll take a closer look at some of those storms there. We have 3 warnings in effect. Of course, the tornado warning is going to be our priority. That lasts until 10:15, so it's a little bit of a long duration event, right? Goes for more than a half hour at this point, but it's moving pretty quickly at about 45 miles per hour. Now, earlier on this evening, we saw several tornado warnings pop up in the Chicagoland area, and they moved quickly, and we kept seeing those warnings get extended. Now, with that velocity, or kind of what we're looking at as far as that rotation tracker, it looks like this could stick around for quite a bit of time, so keep that in mind. I don't want to fully discount where this is tracking, though. Again, we've mentioned Decatur, Lawton. If it continues to hold in shape, it could actually pass just to the south of the Portage area, so we're keeping a really close eye on that for the time being. I do want to touch on those other severe thunderstorm warnings, though. The one that was first issued for Allegan and Van Buren counties, that one carries through 10:15, so that is in line with our tornado warning. Both would theoretically expire at 10:15 if they aren't extended. They could expire before that if it starts to lose that severe threat. Not a whole lightning. If you are seeing lightning, you're likely around the Allegan area, but for the most part, heavy rain is going to be our concern. Probably going to break some rainfall records, at least for today's single-day rainfall records. And finally, this other one down to our south, our other severe thunderstorm warning. This one goes through 9:45, so we have about 5 minutes left with this one, and I do think there's a good chance it does get extended. They may just kind of tack it along with the tornado warning, as that's kind of the most intense portion of the storm, but you'll see a lot of other storms kind of firing up behind this. Those aren't expected to be severe. This is probably the worst of it, but for now, again, watching those 3 storms. We'll head over to Ellen now for a quick look at that tornado warning.
Yeah, so focusing in, and we wanted to get back down to street level. In the meantime, I'm going to have Blake or Sarah start looking at some of the area cameras in Kalamazoo, seeing if they can spot anything, although it's difficult. But we want to take it just on the east side of Keeler. So I'll have you guys take this full screen so that we can give the folks impacted the best chance of seeing where the center of rotation is. So we have this on wind tracker mode. This shows us where the rotation is. Again, if I had to pinpoint with this latest scan where the tornado might be, it's getting ready to move into the Frittsburg area, and it has now passed through Keeler. So Keeler, you are in the clear. Decatur, you still need to get into your safe space. Taking it in even further, we're going to put a few tracks on here, time of arrival, so that you can see how close this thing is. Once again, riding up Territorial Road, this should be moving towards County Road 215 at about 9:43. We should see this momentarily. Let's see. I want to fix this quickly here. We should see this momentarily moving into Decatur. So with the steady moving speed of about 45 miles per hour, Decatur, right on the west side of town, we should start to see rotation moving in around 9:48. The center of Decatur closer to about 9:48 as well, and then the east side of Decatur looking like 9:49. Portions of this could also clip south of Decatur onto Old Swamp Road, because again, it's anywhere that we have this division between dark red and green that we could see something pop up. So time of arrival, again, forward moving speed, looks like Old Swamp Road at about 9:49. So if you're far south of Decatur, closer to about 9:50, basically the same at this speed. Frittsburg, it looks like the division is over you right now. We've got 1-minute scans. We're the only TV station in West Michigan that has 1-minute scans, so we can get the latest information. Right now, it looks like with the current moving speed and direction, we should be on the south side of Lawton. So you're looking at the last 15 minutes. This almost looks like it's starting to take a bit of an east-southeasterly lean to it. Okay.
Yeah, some of the tracks are kind of indicating that it'll head a little bit further southeast, so might just be south of Decatur.
Yeah. And actually, this tacks on to what Sarah was mentioning, the fact that the severe thunderstorm warning to the south might expire soon, but they might tack it on to this tornado warning. So that being said, it looks like places like Twin Lakes might need to get ready. Marcellus, we'll go ahead and pause this. Here's the latest scan. Marcellus, rotation potentially over you close to about 9:59. Valina, closer to about 9:53. And then, yeah, Decatur, south side of town is probably more likely than not going to be impacted, 9:47. This does, however, mean places like Paw Paw, Matawan, Lawton may be in the clear. I'm not going to give you the all clear yet. We'll never do that while you're under a tornado warning still. especially if you're still technically ahead of where the tornado could be. But Paw Paw, Matawan, Lawton looking better for you as the trajectory looks to continue to take this down east-southeast.
That's a severe thunderstorm warning for St. Joseph.
Okay. So it looks like a new severe thunderstorm warning has just been issued for Dowagiac, Valina, Wakely, Marcellus, Flowerfield, Portage Lake, Moore Park, Three Rivers. This is for Cass and St. Joseph County. And it's interesting, they are not continuing a tornado warning down to the south. Instead, they are doing a severe thunderstorm warning. Let's see, is that for wind speed, for damaging wind gusts, I'm assuming?
Yep, 60 mile per hour winds.
60 mile per hour winds.
Potential hail, but doesn't look very likely.
Yeah. Potential hail, not as likely as the wind damage.
And that's east at 35 as well.
Excellent, east at 35.
We did get a comment in the chat too, which is good news, that we didn't have any damage calls or like 911 calls in Berrien County. So that's good news.
That is excellent news.
Yeah, and again, this is radar indicated, so we don't have confirmation that anything is on the ground at this point. I don't know if you've heard anything, Blake.
Yeah, we're kind of getting a new picture up, but we don't have a confirmation at this point. Yeah, we just got an update on the tornado warning. It says we're still radar indicated. Severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado located near Decatur, 5 miles north of Dowagiac, moving east at 30 miles per hour, which is fairly significantly different from what the speed was when the warning was first issued.
Still slowing to 30?
Yes.
And then Jenny, if you'd like, you can pop up double boxes of the Kalamazoo camera from time to time as well. Seeing some lightning flashes there. Granted, that's north of where the tornado warning is. However, we do have some fresh tracks in there. So actually, if it's moving at 30, let's see. Looks like Howardsville, 1005, Three Rivers, 1019, and that's for the current tornado warning. But again, you just said updated as speed at 30. So yeah, Sarah, we might need to put a fresh track on that.
So we got a new picture. This is just to the west of Decatur. And this is for our Michigan Storm Chasers crew who continues to be on the storm as it moves through southern Van Buren County. And if we can actually take me here at monitor 6, we can show you this picture. But we do, yeah, here it is. So you can see the big mesocyclone there. No apparent tornado. Granted, there's a lot of rain that's occurring, hearing from the crews that are on this storm right now, and it does sound like they're having some visibility issues, which is common here in Michigan, not only because of the landscape, but because of the heavy rain. At this point, they have not been able to, looks like, see an actual tornado down, but we're getting word from Alex Melendez, who's with Michigan Storm Chasers. Nothing is down at the moment anymore, still seeing some rotation, and obviously with the velocity signature that we continue to see on radar, it certainly remains possible that we could get a tornado touchdown here as this warning continues.
And radar indicated is like the first step.
Yep.
So anytime we get a tornado warning, it usually means that we need to take it seriously because any second we could see a tornado on the ground. And of course, all the tornado warnings that verified over in Chicago started as radar indicated and looked very similar. So a new track here for you with the fresh arrival time, wind speed of about 30 miles per hour, wind direction, I should say, forward moving speed. Decatur, 9:51 for arrival time. Flowerfield, 10:24. Schoolcraft, 10:25. Vicksburg, 10:35. It is ideal that we have a group of chasers out in the fields communicating with us. It's always very helpful. They are trained. In addition to that, sometimes we look at the debris tracker. So if we were to pull that up, I don't think that we're seeing anything yet. No, not quite. It looks like, once again, the range is coming in close to about 0.8. So not anything substantial. Typically, when you see your debris tracker numbers drop down significantly and it's consolidated in a tight little circle, it's a good indication that a tornado has touched down and it's lofted debris in the air.
We did just get a report, actually, as the storm was hitting the coast, just to the west-southwest of Covert, wind gusts of 54 miles per hour. So even without a tornado, this storm is cranking out some pretty decent wind. We've been monitoring power outages. It's usually a telltale sign of what's happening, both with Consumers Energy, right on the edge of Consumers Energy, and Indiana and Michigan Power. I'm not seeing any substantial outages at this point, but I would not be surprised if we start to see some pop up in southern Van Buren County. As again, we do have confirmed wind gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour on top of the rotation that we continue to track that is moving through Decatur.
Yeah, and we're also monitoring several things along the line. So I don't know if you saw Sarah Flynn occasionally. She's monitoring over for me, kind of looking at the radar. She's pointing out some areas and keeping an eye on all the different portions of the line that could produce a tornado. There actually is one a little further north, just south of Lawrence. And velocity is not the most convincing. However, you can see on the debris tracker, we have exactly what I was saying that we look for, that consolidated circle with a big debris drop, a big drop in number. So this is down near probably about 0.7 instead. Sometimes this can happen with hail. We're not expecting a lot of hail with this system. So this would be more indicative of potentially something other than a raindrop or a hailstone being lofted into the air. So Lawrence, I would go ahead and say if you live in Lawrence and especially are driving on 61st Avenue, you need to make sure to get to a safe spot quickly. This is also going to be crossing near M51 or over M51.
Yeah, Ellen, kind of one of our challenges that we talked about even before this warning was issued is this is right on the edge of our Grand Rapids radar and our radar that's situated in northern Indiana. So what we're sampling here, what we're looking at on our radar is several thousand feet in the air. So that makes it even more difficult for us as opposed to if this rotation or if this possible debris were right next to the radar site, we'd have a better idea of what's going on. But we're kind of having to make inferences about what's happening below where the radar is scanning because it's several thousand feet up in the air. And that's where we're having a difficult time discerning some of this stuff. The edge of those two radars is basically southern Van Buren, northern Berrien, St. Joseph, and Cass County. So that's where we're kind of having to make some inferences, meteorologists trying to figure out if the radar is playing mind games on us or if we're actually seeing something take place. It's clear that we do have rotation that continues toward Decatur. And actually, as I look at this, it looks like there might be another one that's setting up just to the northwest of Dowagiac.
I agree, which is interesting because it's moving into the same area that already has a watch box issued.
Yeah.
And that was from a previous cell.
Yeah.
So again, we're watching scan by scan to see what these storms are doing. The atmosphere is fluid in motion. It's always turning and changing, which means at any point in time, you could see something spin down to the ground. So it does look like our friends at the National Weather Service are going to be looking into that correlation coefficient drop near Lawrence that we were talking about just 2 minutes ago. But until then, we also are going to focus in on the Dowagiac cell and the Decatur cell. Also, as Blake was mentioning, we have two radar sites that kind of overlap at a high level for these two spots. So switching and looking at the northern Indiana radar site, it does also have a couplet there as well. It's a bit of a broad rotation that we're seeing, but it's still present. So we have two separate radars that are sampling these storms, and they're both getting similar values. The thing is, they're sampling it so high up in the sky compared to if we had a cell close to Grand Rapids or Holland.
Yeah, if you're in Dowagiac, it might not be a bad idea to just head down to your lowest level of your home. Based on the potential for rotation that we are seeing. And there you can see rotation tracker. There is a signature that's being picked up there. We're not the only ones asking about this. We're in touch with the Weather Service, and we have some others asking about that debris potentially near Lawrence. So we're trying to get some clarification on it. So hopefully we can get that in the near future from the Weather Service to see if they have any idea what's going on there as well. And again, this is a very wooded area. Ellen, you and I were talking before we came on. I was actually on a storm that moved through Bangor in late June of 2020 that did a lot of damage. Very wooded area, very difficult to see what's coming. And in some parts of Van Buren County down there, very, very rural and very wooded. And so you won't be able to see much coming your way if there is something coming your way. And obviously with the amount of trees that are in that area, that makes it potentially more dangerous for trees to come down on top of structures and across roadways. That's why it's important that if you are within any of these warnings to take shelter at this time.
You know, and oftentimes we don't report, like, if just a tree fell on a car.
If it falls in the woods, does anyone hear it?
Right, exactly. We often don't, and we hear stories after the fact of a lot of close calls from people. So sometimes, you know, we'll share those, but it never really makes the news unless something really bad happens. Unfortunately, with storms like this, we do hear a lot of secondary reports of of trees falling in the road in front of people, on cars. I had a friend that had a tree fall right on their car. Luckily, they survived, but it was this kind of setup. So even if we don't get a tornado warning that materializes, these storms are strong enough to do that, as Blake just alluded to, and there's a lot of trees in that area. Again, really interested in where the beam is, radar beam is picking up on potential rotation for two separate portions of this storm. The one that's just passed through Decatur and the one that's approaching the Twin Lakes area. Sarah's going to put a fresh track on this for us. And it looks like new arrival time, 10 o'clock for Twin Lakes. So we're getting pretty close, like in 7 minutes. Volina, close to about 10:09. Marcellus, 10:24. Howardsville, 10:34. Moore Park, looks like the potential rotation over you at 10:42. Parkville, 10:51. Bottom line, if you live in Van Buren County, if you live in Cass, St. Joseph, just a good idea to get away from windows, go down into your basement, even for just 20 minutes. It does not take long. And wait for this storm to pass, because scan by scan, this is looking more interesting, especially this cell near Decatur.
I completely agree with that. It seems to be picking up. And if you are in Decatur, you can send storm reports to us, weather@woottv.com. We're very interested to see what's happening down there in southern Van Buren County, and that's an area where we don't always get a lot of viewer reports. So we certainly love to hear from you what is going on. If you are seeing damage, obviously do so safely. But based on the signature that we've seen, there's a real potential of some damage down there in far southern Van Buren County. You'll have to forgive me for checking my phone, but I'm getting some more updates from Michigan Storm Chasers as they continue to track this storm in southern Van Buren County. Looks like a pretty impressive mesocyclone that is continuing, and I'll pull back the image that we had a few minutes ago. This was as it was moving into Decatur, and you can clearly see the structure there and the rotation. What mesocyclone is basically rotating severe thunderstorm. But at this point, you can't visibly see a tornado on the ground here, and so that's what we're trying to get. And again, as we mentioned here in Michigan, especially with the amount of rain that we're seeing, we can get rain-wrapped tornadoes pretty easily, where they can be very difficult to see if they're on the ground. And that's why it's so important to take shelter if you are within one of these tornado warnings. So we have, again, multiple areas of rotation that we're watching. The one that is warned is for southern Van Buren County here. And this one just moved through Decatur and is continuing off to the east-southeast. And then we have another area of rotation that is over toward, going to likely hit the north side of Dowagiac as this pair of potential pockets of rotation continues to track off to the east-southeast. And we are just hearing from the Weather Service now. We mentioned that we had seen that area of potential debris being lofted up. And actually, let me see if I can pull that up here.
In the Lawrence area?
Yes, right up near Lawrence. That is this one that I'm going to circle right here. We're just hearing from the Weather Service that their warning team at the Weather Service is monitoring this area. And if we step it back a few frames, you can see it looked a little more impressive as it was just south of Lawrence. But there's still the potential of some debris being lofted up. And again, this is a very wooded part of Van Buren County. And so there's a chance that we do have some tree debris being lofted up, and that's what's difficult to discern right now. But we're just getting word from the Weather Service that they are monitoring that. No official word on and if that is debris being picked up or not. But that just shows the severity of the situation that we're dealing with here. This environment that is conducive for potential tornadoes. And it looks like we're just getting an update on the severe thunderstorm warning.
And there is a tornado possible with that new severe thunderstorm warning. It looks like it's moving. I need to check the forward moving speed, but it has the potential of producing a tornado, winds to 60 miles per hour. And what we were actually just talking about.
East at 35.
35?
Yeah.
Thank you. If you turn on rotation tracker, we were noticing kind of a discrete couplet, and this was up towards the Allegan area. So this is actually in Allegan County, just south of Allegan, moving towards the Bittersweet Ski Resort. This is already past Pullman and Crooked Lake. It's really tricky to see on your classic velocity, but there is a decent couplet there. And again, this looks like it's pretty subtle, but it is structured in a way that it's caught our attention, and there's a lot of heavy rain involved. So once again, it could really easily get wrapped down to the ground. This is going to be likely skirting on the south side of Allegan. So keep that in mind. This is going to be moving southeast towards Plainwell if it can hang on to the strength of its rotation. So this means Otsego, Plainwell all have to be on deck, so to speak. This likely is going to cut on the south side of Martin as well. So we're really watching for all these little pockets. I mean, at first glance, this looks so dizzying. We have all these red and green colors together. But again, we're trained to look for certain organization within it. And right there, that is strong enough and at least significant enough that a tornado could possibly wrap down. No confirmed tornadoes yet, though.
No, although we are just hearing from Alex Melendez with Michigan Storm Chasers of a funnel cloud. We're trying to get confirmation as to which area of rotation this is on. I believe they were on the one that is now moving east of Decatur, but we're waiting to hear back on word from word on that and stand by for that. But we're hearing a potential funnel cloud that's being reported by our Michigan Storm Chasers who are out in the field. And some of the best verification you can get in times like this is from eyes out in the sky from trained spotters, and that's what we're relying on right now, especially here in a relatively rural population such as southern Van Buren County.
Yeah, emphasis on the trained spotters. This is not something that we want people to just, stick your head outside. I know that there's always a temptation to do that, but it's just never a good idea for that to happen, especially in this instance, because it's just going to be so difficult to even see anything. St. George Street, if you live in Decatur, especially along St. George Street, you're going to want to take cover now. We also have State Road 352.
We have Alex, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're
Ellen.
fine.
92nd Avenue near M40 in Van Buren County, looking off to the northwest is where they have that report of a funnel cloud. And you'll have to forgive me, I'm not terribly familiar with this area. We have a new severe thunderstorm warning, tornado
Kalamazoo?
possible for
Yeah.
Kalamazoo County.
Okay.
That is moving east at 30 miles per hour.
East at 30. So we'll have Sarah put a fresh track on that for us. And again, if you're watching us just 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, we talked about the potential of this moving into Kalamazoo County. This should likely cut on the south side of I-94. So if you live on the north side of town, closer to Kalamazoo City proper, likely some gusty winds, heavy rain, but it's more Portage, Pavilion, Schoolcraft, Vicksburg. You're the folks that have to not just prepare for a severe thunderstorm warning, but also that outside chance of a quick spin-up tornado. Law and arrival time, 10:05. Schoolcraft, 10:27. Portage, 10:33. Vicksburg, 10:38. Pavilion, 10:44. And Fulton, 10:57. If you don't see a spin-up tornado, there's still the possibility of wind speeds of about 60 miles per hour. And to put that in perspective, that can take down some dead trees. That can also knock out power. Right now, latest power outage reports are minimal across all of Michigan, and looking at northern Indiana as well, coming in pretty minimal. So that's one of our best first things that we look for ground verification, aside from trained spotters. And we're not seeing much yet, which is ideal. That's what we want. Hopefully we can see this storm pass without any damage on the ground. But again, we saw confirmed decent-sized tornadoes in the Chicagoland area from this same line of storms. So it's not playing around. There's nothing really stopping it from producing tornadoes here, especially because as these are moving due east, a lot of places have surface winds coming out of the southeast. So you have that low-level spin in place. And that's why even though we didn't have the classic severe weather setup today, the low-level spin and the fact that we have so much moisture is usually enough for us to spin up something small. And typically in the last 10 years, that's been the vast majority of the tornado warnings we've seen. Quick spin-up tornadoes. They're on the ground for a minute to 5 minutes. They knock down some sheds. They knock down tons of trees. And then they lift. So that's what you should prepare for. And you always think, it's not gonna happen to my house until, it happens to your house. So again, Decatur, Lawton, this is now valid as a severe thunderstorm warning with the possibility of a tornado for especially the south side of Kalamazoo County. We're talking south of I-94. This is going to roll directly over 131 towards Portage, Vicksburg, especially South Portage, and then eventually over towards Climax, if it can continue to hold on to its rotation. Kind of impressive that the rotation continues with both of these.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, I am surprised for the southern one.
Yeah.
That there's really been no indication. This one kind of over Twin Lakes here.
Yeah.
It's not a bad rotation, especially.
No, and if you put the velocity into motion, you can actually still see this thing spinning, which aligns with our idea of a mesocyclone. They're continuing the tornado warning, looks like, until
10:15.
But you can just see it spinning, and that aligns with that picture that we had of the mesocyclone down there of what is basically just a very large, rotating, severe thunderstorm that's capable of producing a tornado, and still is, as it's about to move into southern Kalamazoo County and perhaps far northern Cass County here over the next few minutes.
Yeah, so still moving east at 30 miles per hour. They're going to have to make a decision if they're going to extend this tornado warning or not.
Yeah.
Which I think they're waiting for a couple more scans to come in before they do just that. But it's still under, or really southern Kalamazoo County still has that severe thunderstorm warning. So regardless, you're going to see likely some high winds come in and especially heavy rain that we've been dealing with for several hours now, especially north of the area. So we'll keep an eye on it. But really, yeah, we're boiling down to these two areas of rotation, one of which has been warned and is clearly warned for now, just south of Lawton, just east of Decatur, and one that is moving over the Twin Lakes area. The good news is that both of these, well, just one of them, I suppose, is radar indicated, that one tornado warning that again extends through 10:15. The one over Twin Lakes is just a severe thunderstorm, so really there's no evidence that there could or would be a tornado on the ground. Even that latest scan, though, is still coming in pretty steadily that there is some sort of rotation with this storm. So we're keeping an eye on it, but we haven't seen any reports over that area, have we?
No,
Yeah.
and we haven't even gotten any like wind damage reports that we're like, oh, we should go back and see what exactly caused that. We're not seeing any of that yet, and we're not getting any confirmation. So a lot of this rotation could be aloft. Looking at where the radar beam is intersecting, it's about 3,000 to 4,000 feet above ground level. So if these storms were closer to Grand Rapids, the radar beam would be intersecting them at a lower level, but literally 3,000 to 4,000 feet is the lowest in the storm that we can sample Lawton and Twin Lakes and Volina at this point in time. So we can't get a sample any closer to the ground with the technology that we have. That's just the way it goes. However, when you have a parent storm, Blake mentioned the word mesocyclone, that's spinning, that is usually a necessity to get low level spin. And we also look to see how close together, how tight a couplet these red and greens are. So still a tornado warning. Decatur, you're now in the clear. But for the east side of Van Buren County, we're talking places like Porter Township, Huzzy Lake, Bankson Lake, Grass Lake, Cedar Lake. Right on the west side of the Van Buren Kalamazoo County line. This includes places like Shaw Road, 28th Street, CR County Road, 652, 28th Street. If I listed where you live or a cross street close by, you still need to get into your safe space.
And I think the next big community that is going to be tracking towards here within the next, I'd say, 10, 15 minutes or so is going to be Schoolcraft area, Schoolcraft and Vicksburg, if this continues on its current trajectory. And again, no tornado warning at this time for Kalamazoo County, but we do continue to see rotation and signs of what is trying to be a potentially spin-up tornado that is going to be heading toward your area, Schoolcraft and Vicksburg here within again, the next 15 minutes or so. Here's a live view out of Kalamazoo. It's getting to that time of the night where it's difficult to see a whole lot, which is a challenge for us. And that's what makes going out and looking at these storms at night so dangerous.
Time of arrival here, just again, the county line road, 352 area. This is again in between Van Buren County and Kalamazoo County. We're gonna take it quickly first to street line or street view level. Again, roughly 35 miles per hour for a forward moving speed. So you might be saying, hey, you already mentioned some of those spots. Yes, but the weather doesn't just pick a speed and stay. It can change from time to time. So we want to continue to get fresh tracks at all times. 2nd Street in Kalamazoo County, South 2nd Street, arrival time for a potential spin-up tornado or at least gusty wind, 1010. This is going to be moving towards South 12th Street on the east side of Schoolcraft, close to about 1019. Schoolcraft, you need to get into your safe space now. The rotation isn't the strongest I've seen, but in a single radar scan, it can tighten, and we've seen evidence of that. So this is just one of those times where it's better safe than sorry. Grab the kids, grab the dog, grab a snack, go downstairs.
Always grab a snack.
Always grab a snack. 10:20, so we still have about 13 minutes before the rotation arrives. Of course, you don't want to wait until the last minute. That's silly with anything.
And Alan, you know what's interesting is there's almost a third area of rotation back by Dowagiac again. If we
That
were to
Dowagiac
zoom out-
one.
Yeah, it's difficult
That's
to
so
discern.
interesting.
But, they have potentially another area of rotation here.
These keep like kicking out. Like this is the first batch that triggered the severe thunderstorm warning. This was the second one that's rolled along that same path.
Yeah.
And then you're right, Blake, a third. Man, Dowagiac, just stay in your safe space at this point in time. Also want to check in on Allegan.
It fell apart pretty quickly.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
This is why it's so helpful to have
good.
3 meteorologists and then others like our storm chasers that are live in the field that are trained, like the National Weather Service that are also using radar equipment to monitor these storms. It really is one of those things where you have to search and find the patterns within the mess to see what lines up correctly and could produce a quick spin up tornado. Michigan is difficult. We are not Oklahoma. We don't have these classic supercells where it's super obvious on radar what's happening. We have one of the most difficult places in the nation to forecast tornadoes for because they are brief and they spin up fast. So we kind of have to babysit the radar. Chicago saw some clear supercells before this morphed into a line. Look at this. This was Chicago earlier today. Big tornado on the ground. In fact, I believe they had 3 confirmed tornadoes.
I believe so, yeah.
So the difference between what we're seeing now, which is just radar indicated and confirmed, is there's eyes showing it on the ground, there's debris being lofted. But again, this is the same line. This is the same system that produced that just a couple hours ago. So that's why we're taking it seriously.
We're hearing from actually a meteorologist who was in Van Buren County who said she drove from downtown Lawrence to 94, then continued west on the highway. Didn't see any damage. So that area of potential debris that we were tracking near Lawrence, we don't have any ground truth to that at this point, which of course is great news. But we do want to point out, actually, we have a big power outage that's showing up just north of Lawrence in Bangor Township. Looks like it just was reported at about 9:40. About 850 customers out on that one. So we are seeing some signs of either some wind damage or potentially even tornado damage.
Seeing a few, It's like Cheshire Center. There's an outage there. And it looks like the outage you're just talking about, Blake, is for the Breedsville area, Arlington Township. Sometimes there's a slight delay from when the outages come in versus when the storm rolls over, but it usually is one of our first reports to see where gusty winds have formed and touched down. Let's see.
Just to the southeast of South Havens where we're seeing that power outage, Kyle. It is on the far southern edge of Consumers Energy's service area. But
And in addition to this, we're just seeing a lot of ponding and pooling of water. It's tons of rain.
A lot. We have a flood advisory. It's in effect for most of the Grand Rapids area as we continue to see heavy rain. But one thing that the heavy rain helped us out with here in Grand Rapids was to avoid some of the severe weather that we're seeing off of the south.
It really was a divide. It was like areas north of Kalamazoo and even north of Wayland most likely to just see the heavy rain. Areas south of Wayland most likely to see a severe thunderstorm, wind gust, or isolated tornado. We have not had much in the way of severe weather this year, even in the last several years.
This looks a lot. It looks like there's some
If you go down by
improvement.
South Haven, Kyle, you can actually see that outage that is down there. Yeah, it looks like it just popped up. There it is, yep. So that aligns pretty well with the storm that we were tracking as it moved into Van Buren County. Either, again, from straight line winds or potentially something tornadic. Too early to tell.
And looking again at the wind tracker, which looks inside the storm, you can see that we still have 2 decent areas of rotation. The one that's rolling over to Dowagiac right now is kind of fizzling a bit. But Galena, Lawton, headed towards Portage and Vicksburg, that area of rotation is actually still looking quite good. So if we switch back to the wind tracker graphics 1, Sarah has outlined where those areas are.
Over on Links 1.
And you can see all the yellow there too. That's a tornado watch. It's everyone that currently has the chance of seeing a tornado. So that's what we're seeing in yellow. Yes, I loved that you guys switched to wind tracker. So we're gonna go ahead and switch back to Links 1 now. Perfect. So this shows us again inside the storm motion. The one that's looking most favorable is, to me, is the one that's moving just to the north of Wakely. Valina, you're actually almost in the clear here. And this is headed directly towards Marcellus. Nicholsville, you also need to get into your safe space. Wakely, you're at least feeling a big gust of wind. If not, the potential for a quick spin-up tornado. And that's the thing, is there's like always a chance when you have an environment like this. It's literally second by second. This is going to be moving towards Marcellus, Howardsville, Moore Park, Parkville, Flowerfield, Portage Lake, Three Rivers, and Centerville.
We do have an update. Tornado warning has been expired for Van Buren County. Looks like we have no new issuances at this point.
That's excellent. I think we should stay on just a touch longer for this rotation with the storm that's rolling right now towards Wakely and Marcellus.
We do have our Michigan Storm Chaser crew situated just south of Marcellus. They said they don't have a visual yet, waiting on some lightning to see if they can get something illuminated, maybe get a good view, because obviously with it now being 15 minutes after 10, daylight is essentially gone, so they're having to rely on some natural light to show up in the form of lightning to try to get a view of anything.
Yeah, so if you're just coming in, this red box that is flashing here is a tornado warning, but that has since been expired. And it was not, or it has not been extended into Kalamazoo County just yet. So we are just left behind with 3 severe thunderstorm warnings, some of which actually expire here momentarily.
Yes, looks like Allegan, Van Buren also expiring.
Okay. So we are left with Kalamazoo County, which goes through 11:30. I know that is quite literally more than an hour away, so we'll see how that gets extended.
Yes.
I know that seems a little bold. And then our second severe thunderstorm warning just to the south of it. That one goes until 10:30, and that is actually the one that I think we've kind of shifted our focus to ever so slightly because of this area of rotation really just won't kind of give off. When we see those reds and those greens start to mix together, it indicates that there is some sort of rotation. Now, it is not tornado warned, and sometimes we do see storms briefly rotate for a few scans or two, and it doesn't necessarily mean that a tornado is being produced, but it is something we keep a close eye on, especially here when we have quick spin-ups, oftentimes embedded in a line. If you heard about those storms earlier on in the Chicagoland area, those were pretty classic storms, but here's a look at our radar. This is messy. This is a cluster, and within this cluster, or an attempt at a line, I would say, kind of an oddly shaped line, that's where we're starting to see some of those small little notches, we call them, small little areas of rotation. This area of rotation that was warned for Van Buren and Allegan County really has broken up. I'm impressed. This is kind of what's left behind with it, but it's not looking very, very good to me. So I think it's safe to say that is a severe thunderstorm warning, rightfully so.
Yeah.
But the one to the south, we're going to keep an eye on because it's still kind of cooking.
Takes a while for damage reports to trickle in. Do want to let you guys know that some of these storms that we cut in and stayed on with, starting to get some damage reports. They have not been verified necessarily yet, but we've heard of Geneva Township seeing some damage. This could be wind related. This could be because a weak tornado did in fact touch down. It's always difficult, as Blake and Sarah were mentioning, after dark or close to dark. But about 7 miles east of South Haven, kind of the 62nd Street, County Road 388th Avenue, we are starting to hear of preliminary damage reports. Nothing massive like a full-fledged house at this point in time, but things like potentially a chicken coop or a farm stand. So again, that could be just wind related, but it could be our first indication that something actually touched down to the ground. So if you live in Kalamazoo County, especially south of Kalamazoo in the Portage area, Marcellus, Flower Fields, Climax, check on your chickens, I would say.
Check on your chickens.
Check on your chickens.
You heard it here
Actually,
first.
just go inside, get to your safe space, make sure you have the whole family with you. And I mean, these are moving at about 35 to 45 miles per hour overall is what we've been seeing tonight. So that's not very long to just hang out in the basement. Schoolcraft, arrival time, 10:19. Portage, arrival time, 10:19. Flowerfield, 10:22. Howardsville, same time. Vicksburg, 10:30. Moore Park, 10:33. Pavilion, 10:33. Portage Lake, 10:40. Parkville, 10:41. Climax, 10:43. Fulton, 10:49. Mendon, a little later, closer to about 11. This is for Leonidas and Athens as well. And as Sarah was mentioning, like that's a ways away. That's almost an hour away. So we have to see if these are going to be able to survive. They're really not discrete. You know, they're not standalone. They've kind of started to morph into this giant line. And sometimes when that happens, it means they lose their ability to produce like one strong portion of the storm. But we still have a decent amount of rotation here. And the tornado watch is still in effect. Likely we're going to see some counties dropped like Van Buren, Berrien, Allegan. You're likely going to be dropped here from the tornado watch momentarily. Even Hastings, I'd give it 45 more minutes before you're dropped. And then it's kind of the east side of the state's problem at that point in time, where they have to watch this very same line track through at about 35 to 45 miles per hour. Honestly, they have to deal with it in the overnight, which is always a little bit dicier because so many people are sleeping. Yeah, looking at rotation, it's kind of starting to fizzle a bit. It's a good sign. Little notch still just on the west side of Vicksburg, getting ready to roll over 131 at this point in time. This is going to be straight through the Schoolcraft area, headed towards Fulton. But nothing glaringly concerning at this point in time.
It is heavy rain at this point, so keep an eye out for, I know even just driving into work today, it was a little bit difficult. There is some localized flooding, so keep that in mind if you have to head out the door tonight or even early tomorrow morning.
Reports of flooding, Bauer Township just north of Hudsonville, and just looking at traffic speeds across West Michigan, even the major freeways are slowing down, likely due to the heavy rain and potentially some pockets of flooding. We got a report of flooding on 131 near 100th Street. I believe, near 100th Street, so on southbound lanes. So certainly heavy rain is a threat for just about everyone in West Michigan, as that flood watch and flood advisory remain in effect. But even if aren't seeing the severe weather, make sure you check those basements, check those sump pumps this evening, because we do see heavy rain that's continuing for essentially everyone here in West Michigan.
I think we're just going to do a brief reset here, make sure we can cover all of our bases, because the last thing that we want to do is to, let you go as people are hunkered down and then have something spin back up. So it's always better safe than sorry in this instance. Thank you guys to everyone who's staying with us, watching us, staying safe. Otherwise, it's just a really good light show and rain show from Grand Rapids down to Hastings, especially if you're indoors. 2 active severe thunderstorms at this point in time. And again, we still have the potential for some damage from Mattawan to Texas Township. This includes Moord's Golf Club, right over Portage Creek, Prairie Road Township. We've got places like Swan Park, Austin Lake, West Lake, Indian Run, all within the chance, all within the potential of seeing some wind damage here. So we're gonna, okay. Yep. So we're going to be with you guys for about the next 6 minutes or so. I think that should be enough time for us to see how these storms progress, get a few more scans in, and then we'll just stand by and monitor for safety as these continue towards Calhoun County and closer to about Branch County. Right now, not seeing a huge lightning count. Still present, but lightning strikes totaling about 23, and some of that includes what's going on in Lansing and Holt. So not the most impressive. We did have a bigger lightning count when these storms initially rolled on shore. Taking us in, Ramona Park. This is my old stomping grounds, Portage. Hopefully my mom and dad are doing what's right and going to the basement or their safe space. They're probably like, oh, we're okay. No. Oakland Drive, Portage Road, Sprinkle Road, you know the drill. Just go downstairs for a bit. And again, Schoolcraft area, if we just turn this back onto shear rate, Schoolcraft is basically where we're seeing like the best chance of rotation, but it's so minimal, so minimal. So if you live in Schoolcraft at all, Clay Street, Holmes, Lee, Hager, West W Avenue, you're starting to hear the flashes, hear the rain. Just know rotation is going to be tracking over you in about 10 minutes. My mom just texted, and she just texted a heart. So I know that she's definitely in her safe space now. All right, Sarah, give us an overview of what's going on.
Yeah, so if you're just tuning in or maybe trying to get the last couple of minutes of our 10 p.m. newscast, a little bit going on across the region. I'm over on monitor 1 if you guys want to take that camera. We're dealing with still a few severe thunderstorm warnings in place, so a decent amount of lightning being produced with these storms as well. But really the main threat that we have turned to is looking at flooding across the board. With that, I'd like to show kind of just how much rain that we're dealing with across the board. Really, areas kind of around the I-96 corridor are seeing some of that heaviest of rain. We still do have that flood watch in effect through Thursday morning, although we may see it expire if this rain picks up and moves a little bit quicker. But still, those 2 severe thunderstorm warnings, one of which, of course, for southern Kalamazoo County, this is our longest duration warning that we may have had all night. It actually carries through 11:30 tonight. Really, the concern at this point is going to be heavy rain, but I wouldn't be shocked if we saw a few damaging wind gusts with that storm, so keep that in mind. But really, the area of rotation has broken up pretty quickly, so I don't think we'll have any concerns, at least for the time being, of it rotating or producing a tornado. The second storm just to the south of it, this one should technically expire here in just a few moments, but there is a chance that it does continue to get extended, so keep that in mind. For reference, both of these storms near and south of I-94, this storm barely hits the Kalamazoo area, but I honestly think at that point in Kalamazoo it will be subsevere. The heaviest of rain over Portage, Vicksburg. Even our lightning count, you can kind of see those little white dots or little white strikes, has greatly diminished over the last couple of minutes here. So do want to point out that flood watch because I think that's going to be our next biggest concern. If you're headed out late tonight or early tomorrow morning, there is going to be standing water on the sides of roads. I know even just driving into work, I experienced a lot of it. So go slow. Again, it's kind of hard to see, especially after our sunset or before our sunrise. We have seen rain reports well over an inch at this point, and we still have many hours to go with this. So I wouldn't be shocked if by tomorrow morning we saw reports anywhere from 2 to 3 inches. Keep that in mind. And again, this does continue for really around the I-96 corridor, north of I-94, but south of I-94, you've seen some rain, especially embedded in those thunderstorms. Finally, I want to touch on this tornado watch. It does go until 3 a.m. tomorrow morning. And the reason why it goes until 3 a.m. is because it goes all the way over to the eastern portion of the state towards Detroit. So what we're going to see from here on out is this start to get peeled back. I'd say within the next hour or so, at least our lakeshore counties will be in the clear of this, and then it'll slowly move inland. Our threat greatly diminishes right around 11 o'clock, maybe leading up to midnight. And at that point, it will just be heavy rain across the region. Are we seeing any signs of rotation picking up at all? Or
no. And I saw one a little bit further to the north, actually closer to Berry County. But that